Over the last few months on the macro, we've been building out this picture of what the new financial system's actually going to look like. Been looking at CBDCs, tokenization, AMM systems, ZK rollups, supply shock theory, and all of these pieces are coming together like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Now, what I will say is that I've been thrilled at the idea that what we're doing here is completely and entirely new. Like, we are the ones doing the digging. We're not regurgitating. I see most of YouTube is just regurgitation of information. I am so happy that I'm not doing any of this for viewership. Like, I'm not doing this for the views. I'm doing this so that I can be the one finding it out. And so being freed of the idea of trying to get loads of views for these videos and title it in such a way that it just explodes, that's less about what I'm here for. What I'm here for is to figure out how this financial system looks, because ultimately I've got a portfolio that I want to grow and I want to outperform everyone else. So I have to do something that's different to everyone else. You know, if you do the same as everyone else, you will get the same as everyone else. So if you want something different, you have to do something different. So I'm actually doing the work. And that's been really exciting for me. What I've realized is that the more questions I ask and the more answers I put together for those questions, the more questions I end up having. So this is there's a dilemma, there's a word for it. But if you know more about something, you're more likely to understand how much you don't know. And that's certainly where I stand. In this video, although it's going to be a little bit rough around the edges, I want to get into some questions that I haven't yet answered that are top of mind right now. Because if you're subscribed to the macro, which I highly advise you do subscribe to this is developing. I'm progressing through this research on a video by video basis. In fact, it's actually happening on a day-to-day basis, but you're seeing it twice a week. I'm live investigating this stuff. And so when I have answers to some things, they create more questions to other things. And so these episodes are going to reflect my vision for how I think these questions best impact the answers. So we're going to go over the exact questions that we can't answer just now that we're trying to. I've also discovered a list of people who can actually answer these questions. We're going to get into those people as well. Because I think these people hold the key to figuring this stuff out. And I don't see that information anywhere else online. So first, we're going to get into some questions that I think, or in fact, before we get into the questions, let's talk about what we have discovered so far. So in my mind, what we've discovered so far is that in this new financial system, there will need to be pre-funded accounts. These pre-funded accounts will either need to be held by banks if we're not using AMMs to do that. So these pre-funded accounts, by the rules that exist in the system right now, you have to provide sufficient liquidity, so sufficient amount of money in these accounts to allow for the ups and downs of the payment volume for that specific account. That is them are the rules. Them's the rules. Okay. I don't determine those rules. We're going to leads into one of the big questions that we're going to pose for a future video, which is, if we're still pre-funding accounts, what didn't Ripple solve that problem with on-demand liquidity before? And it's an absolutely valid question, but the reason that the fact that the question is asked shows that the understanding of the underlying system isn't there. And that's not anyone's fault. That's just because it's one of those things that is not understood because nobody's actually gone in for the answers. So I will bring the answers to you in one of the coming episodes here, likely one of the next episodes. So we have these pre-funded accounts where if they are pre-funded within the bank's custody, that's one thing. The other option could potentially be an AMM-based system. I have more reason to believe that AMMs would be utilized versus any other type of liquidity system. The reason I think AMMs are going to be utilized, and that's the way that it's going to go, is just because there's an overwhelming amount of information on it by the BIS and by IMF. We've got Project Mbridge that came out about this type of thing, Project Mariana that came out about this type of thing. And it just seems that they're moving towards this AMM-based structure. Now, I made that white paper. AMM-based structures seem very interesting, but it does produce a whole series of other questions that I need the answers to in order to kind of use that understanding and that knowledge best. Because what we found, one of the big findings in the white paper, was that the more liquidity pools you divide your assets up, let's say you're a bank or a financial institution, being involved in having a budget for AMMs is probably what they will have. They'll have a budget for liquidity. If you spread that budget across multiple AMMs, you actually increase the likelihood of something going wrong in each individual AMM, because each individual AMM needs sufficient liquidity to be able to handle the ups and downs of that specific account. And so what you end up with, if you spread, the liquidity that you have in one account, let's say you put the entire budget into one account, there is zero loss, there's zero inefficiency. If you split that same amount across 10 different liquidity pools, you create a 10x liquidity penalty, meaning you actually need to have 10 times the amount of liquidity to allow each one of the individual AMM pools to function properly. And so if you've got $1 trillion to put into AMMs, that's your budget, you instead need $10 trillion. I just don't see banks doing that. So in that case, how are we going to get large-scale AMM adoption from banks when they cannot fragment to a large degree? Because of the liquidity inefficiency element of that. Now, the further questions that we get from that are, well, that's actually greatly determined by the velocity of the payment. So you need an asset that can be used quickly. XRP fits that role perfectly. I mean, as one of the tokens that I think will be involved in all of this, I think stablecoins and tokenized deposit tokens will also be involved, and everyone will have their own slice of the pie. But you need an asset that moves quickly in order to do this. You need a higher velocity. The interesting thing here is that a higher velocity token, if used at a high velocity, and what I mean by that is reused multiple times during the day, you actually create a decrease in the price requirement of XRP, for example. So it's actually not a price increaser to do that, but it needs to move fast. So figuring out what is the velocity, how fast are these assets going to move is like the big question here. And does XRP in its current role serve the purpose of solving that velocity problem? And how can these AMM pools be used with XRP without fragmenting all of the cost? So that's like for me, that's the big question. How can we have institutions be involved in this, access multiple currencies, so pre-fund an account that serves, it is almost like a multi-currency AMM. Now that's been a hurdle for me so far. I haven't dived into it because I'm kind of expressing my desire to do so, and will do in the coming videos. But AMMs typically are just two sides. So you've got the euro, the dollar, the XRP, the USD, whatever it is. It's bilateral. And so the concept of fragmentation, to say that there's actually a massive efficiency loss if you have more than one liquidity pool, means that you want to consolidate your efforts into AMMs, consolidate your liquidity. But if you consolidate your liquidity, you won't be able to serve all these different corridors, these payment corridors, because there are thousands of payment corridors. If you can't fragment into thousands of corridors, and you can't just have one AMM, because then that doesn't serve all the corridors, what happens then? Because you're in a catch-22. You can't do either. Well, there are two solutions: either that you provide loads of liquidity, loads more than you originally than you're used to, or you have consolidated AMMs in multi-currency structures. That's what we're going to dive into. That's one of the big questions for me. And then how does the role of XRP fit into all of that, and all the assets in the inevitable portfolio? How do they line up with all of this as well? These are all kind of big questions for me. I've got my list of questions here because I don't really want to edit this video too much. Just figuring out what the macro level implications of multi-currency liquidity pooling are, the feasibility of all of that. If we can get answers from these, there's a section in a second where I'm going to talk about what I'm doing to try and find out these answers. Then we've got further questions about ZK rollups and their role as a privacy layer in private banking as well. I made a whole video on that. You can go back and watch. I advise you just go back and binge watch every episode of the macro so far. There's a playlist for it, just so you can be live and up to date. You know what's going on every episode. ZK rollups, I feel like, unlock the ability to have privacy in private banking. Obviously, it's private banking. They want privacy. Regardless of what we think about that, like whether we think they should be doing things in private or not, they are going to do things in private. And because of that, they need systems that allow for that privacy. ZK rollups offer that. But that has a role to play in velocity and liquidity, and it all goes together. So it's very difficult to tell you an answer for something because there's actually so many elements of this that are impacted. And then, so over the course of the next 8 to 10 episodes, we'll be diving into all these questions, and I'm sure more questions will develop. I'm not here to, replicate what anyone else has done in this space or regurgitate information. I'm here to produce the information from source. So if you're interested in that, please do subscribe here. I feel like we're doing something special. I'd love to know what you think about that in the comments. Regarding the white paper, I know since I've published it, I've kind of realized, I'm very green in the world of white papers, and that's no secret because I've never done it before. It seems like when people create these white papers, they're not necessarily, coining their own frameworks and equations and stuff, and that's fair enough. I didn't really know that. I just thought, if any of this gets picked up, I want my name on it. So next time I do a white paper, it probably will be less public and more kind of just as a result of the research. Of course, you can see all those developments in the macro community. The link is in the description. But yeah, so I need your help. Because in order to further this research, I need to know a few things. I need to know some of the answers. And in order to get the answers, because I'm just a team of one, I need some help from time to time. What I've noticed is that there are a series of individuals that worked on Project Mbridge and Project, Mariana. These individuals contributed directly to that project and know that thing inside and out. They know the rules, everything. They are a team of people. I have ended up basically putting in a request to interview these individuals. I'm not here to get the biggest guests on my podcast. I'm not interested in big guests and big views. I'm interested in getting the answers. So I've gone directly to the people. And I've got targets that I want us to reach out to kind of not demand, but politely request that they engage with me in a way that provides some answers. Because if we can get the answers to these things, then we're going to be in a great position to be able to, understand this thing from a macro level and a micro level. So there are some people that I've already contacted, and I'm going to list these people. As I list these people, if you know anyone who could get an introduction to these people, or you could go onto social media or LinkedIn, message these people individually and try and just get them to take a look at this first group of people, just get them to take a look at their inbox because I've already sent them an email to request to interview. I'm not here trying to get them on video. I'd love to get them on video to be in one of these episodes, but if they can just respond in writing, like that would be incredible. I will list out the names to you right now, and then there's a list of people that I haven't reached out to that I would also like you to get the attention of. So the first one that I got in contact with was Daniel Eidan. That's EIDAN. He's part of the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub. He was one of the architects of mBridge, so we really want him. He's one of the smartest people alive on CBDC settlement architecture. Any comment or answers from him would be incredibly valuable to the mission here. Another person is Raphael Auer. I'm not sure Auer. I'm not entirely sure how you say it. He is, or at least was, leading the research on FX settlements, liquidity, and tokenization. He's part of Bank for International Settlements as well. Then we've got Benedicte Nolens. I believe that's a lady. She was the former head of the BIS Innovations Hub in Hong Kong. We've got Sorapop Kiatpongsang. They are part of the Bank of Thailand, who were involved in Project Inthenon. They really understand AMM FX logic, and I really would like to get in touch with those. I have messaged all of those people. There's also a person called Oliver Sigrist, who's the BIS architect of Helvetia and Project Jura. And I've also reached out to two additional people, Sonia Davidovich, who's in the IMF, and Michael Alonso, who is the head of tokenization at BIS. These individuals are extremely important to me to get in touch with and discover answers from. They hold the keys to a lot of the answers questions that I'm asking. So please, if you have any way of introducing me to them via email or on social media, please do so. You can get in contact with me on lewisjacksonventures.com/contact. You can contact me in there and just provide that intro. So we've got a lot of stuff that we want to get into on these episodes. I hope you're enjoying the macro so far. If you've got something to say about this episode, questions that you want to ask, extra people that I need to talk to, please let me know in the comments. That'd be greatly appreciated. If you are in the UK, you can access the Inevitable portfolio, the portfolio we're building out here as a result of all this research, on eToro. If you're in the UK, you can sign up to eToro and get $50 worth of one of the assets in the Inevitable portfolio just for creating an account and depositing some money into your account. You're also able to copy trade the Inevitable portfolio as well, which is a really cool feature if you want to be involved. I don't think right now is the time for purchasing. I think that time is going to come real soon. I'm really excited for that. And when that does happen, I'll be very vocal about what I'm doing in my portfolio. If you're anywhere else in the world, you can still register with eToro and do all of those things, but they won't offer the same promotion of that $50 asset for free. The link is in the description for that. Yeah, I think there's nothing else for me to go into. We're going to get into more videos next week. The next 8 to 10 videos are really worth subscribing to this channel for. All right, this has been The Macro. Thanks for watching.